Welcome to music. Oh God, I need to have that chocolate pudding kick in. Welcome to Toot Your Own Horn Music Matters. Today I'm here with the one and only Carmen Chick. Welcome, Carmen.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy to have you, and I can't wait for you to share your story about how you chose your instrument and where it's taken you.
All kinds of places. We're in for a treat today, I'd say.
That's awesome. Well, tell us where it begins. How does it start?
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember sort of growing up in my rural elementary school, looking forward to the big show and tell day where the students would bring in their older siblings' instruments and do like a playthrough demonstration for everyone.
Yep.
So I thought, oh, my older brother plays French horn, and I'm not really a brass player, so let's go ahead and learn how to play clarinet. Like, why not? So,
Oh, wow. So what was it about the clarinet? Did you
absolutely.
see someone else play or what was it that made you go, wow?
I just always had this affinity for the the warm, dark transformation of tone that can come from clarinet. So I will say I am quite a dark player. I prefer to maybe be a little bit more rich in tone. But that's certainly my tone journey has been a whole other beast that I could sit here and talk about for
Oh.
an hour or so. But yeah, I really also really enjoy the tactile nature of playing a woodwind instrument compared to something that's maybe a little bit more conceptual in terms of um like harmonic series and the way that brass instruments fundamentally
Right.
work. I loved knowing that these fingers here make this note is very straightforward.
Right.
I'm a very like process driven learner, and I found that the reliability of clarinet fingerings and just fundamentals and methods in general were really comfortable for me. So it was easy to sort of fall into that structure, I would say. Along with the fact that my grandmother took me into the pawn shop, if you can believe that. And
Oh.
actually, my first clarinet was a used Selmer from probably the early 2000s, and we just picked it up for about $100 in a pawn shop, and the rest is history. Back in Youngstown, Ohio, actually.
Wow. Did it even work? Did you know to fix it? Like what happened when you can't tell me that the pawn shop story? That's really fun.
Right?
But did you know that it needed to be serviced or how did that all
Oh,
work?
honestly, I was flying completely blind. All I had was this passion that I didn't know where to put and a clarinet, you know? So I happened to just flow that passion directly down the bore of the instrument, and it seemed perfect. Like it could not have played better to me in that time. But I assure you, if I were to pull out that instrument from below my bed or wherever it's found itself all these years later, that I would certainly find a few here and there issues that I'd like to go over.
Yeah, so you got it at the pawn shop and you took it to class and you just started playing on it.
Right. Well, on the way back from the pawn shop, I actually put the clarinet together and I was playing in the car on the way home, and they could not take. I was joined at the hip with that instrument, truly.
Wow.
I was out in the front yard just fiddling with the alternate and the trill keys on the side, and just kind of working my fingers around the pinky levers and just sort of playing by feel. At this point I had zero music literacy at all. So it was really just me building this very personal physical relationship with my instrument that opened the door to years of self-expression. And I will say, I my journey in clarinet playing has also been a massive journey of self-discovery. I started playing being driven by the thoughts and the perception of other people. And then I slowly learned through growing and expressing myself that I don't blow through this instrument to appease the general population. I do it because there's this just love and passion that I have to express and that I have to pour out. And so a number of years later, performing became very personal for me. I shifted my perspective away from the audience and more internal. And that was a huge stepping stone for me in my journey. And I think that that basically captures the essence of being a musician in general. That's something that we all have to learn along our path here, is that I don't play this instrument for the clarinet shop or for the symphony or even for the people that enjoy my music. I play this music because I love it. And I truly cannot do anything else. Like, not to pigeonhole myself, but I've done the soul searching and I know that this is me and this is my journey and I'm going to do whatever it takes to stay on this path.
So it was like a magnetic pull right from the get-go. Once you decided the clarinet was cool, there was no turning back.
Absolutely. I honestly have trouble answering the question, what drew me to clarinet in general, because it almost felt like this God sent just
Meant to be.
yes, absolutely. I truly feel like I was programmed before birth, even in this life, to find this instrument and to go down this journey of love and self-discovery and to just change my life through putting a reed on a mouthpiece and blowing through a tube of wood. It's something as simple as that can be so impactful on a person's life. And I'm so grateful that I've had this experience.
So as you got attached to this instrument, did your teacher just, were you at tell me about what happened. Like, did you struggle to play? Were you were you first in line? Did you become first chair? Like, what happened? Was there any reality like this is harder than it looks, or no, it just was always easy, or what happened?
Right. Well, I will say my first reality check in the industry was in 5th grade when we all go into the gym and everybody puts some air through all the different mouthpieces. And I actually scored the highest on flute and rhythm, if you can believe that, after playing clarinet for a year and a half already. And reeded instruments were actually my 3rd or even 4th best score, though I had at least a year of experience teaching myself already. So I think I fell into some negative habits, and that's sort of what contributed to that score. But from that day on, I said to myself, no way, I don't believe that. This is my journey. This is my instrument, and this is my life. And I'm going to play clarinet because I want to, because I have to. So from that point on, that intrinsic motivation of the disappointment of not scoring the highest on the reed mouthpiece was something that really drove me. And I immediately shot to the top of my program within that year, and still at this point self-taught. So I moved through middle school. I moved through the loss of my relationship with my mother, and I played through that. And that was massively helpful for me, having that musical expression, something that I can control, that nobody else knows a lick about, especially in my family. We're not a family of musicians, but having that escape really helped me ground myself through such horrible, tumultuous, abusive years. And then I entered high school and I transferred schools. I moved in with my other parent, and I was it's kind of placed into the top of my high school program as well. From the start as a freshman, I remember being the section leader of the marching band with all of these upperclassmen that I was intimidated by, little old me with all these like seemingly grown adults, even though they're a year or so older than me. It was a really interesting paradigm shift of feeling powerless to having the power to teach and to grow. And that was also the beginning of my teaching career. Though I wasn't being compensated, I really unlocked the roots, the foundation of my passion for sharing my gift and my passion with other people. And that has grown into another incredibly rewarding and just heartfelt career that I never anticipated that I would do. In fact, I pigeonholed myself out of teaching for years after this point, even though in the back of my mind, I knew that I'm a teacher. I know that I'm a leader. So I remember joining this was the first opportunity in the beginning, in early high school, was the first opportunity that I had to join an extracurricular musical ensemble outside of my school program. So I joined the Stambaugh Youth Wind Symphony, and in Youngstown, Ohio, on the YSU campus. I had the opportunity to play in this beautiful historical hall with just the best acoustics you could ask for, And I remember sitting right in the middle of the second clarinet section, and that was just not good enough for me. It was simply not good enough. So I began taking lessons with my mentor, Willow DiGiacomo, who still operates out of the Northeast Ohio area. A little side note for our listeners, I'm born and raised in Northeast Ohio, and I was so graciously invited by Lisa to come and learn woodwind repair at her shop. And I've been working alongside her ever since this spring, and it has been an incredible journey. So I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to continue sharing my story in such a positive way. Like I just I'm over the moon with the way my life and my career is going at the moment. But
we're so happy that you wanted to come. It's so nice to meet people who know what they need to do in their life to move forward. And you were very clear that to learn repair, you needed to move and come here. And it's worked out very nicely. And we're so happy to have you, Carmen. So happy to have you be on team repair and team Lisa's Clarinet Shop and team whatever you want to do, because we are going to succeed at whatever you want to do. That's really clear.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Truly.
Yeah. So when you were in high school, though, when you were realizing you were a teacher and you were starting to feel, I don't know, like, were you intimidated? Did they treat you well? Like, what were people like around you? How did that all work? How did you discover? How did you keep going?
I will say there's always been a level of intimidation internally from older students and more mature players. There will always sort of be that little bit of immature insecurity inside of myself, and I think that's a result of a lot of experiences that I've lived, and also just a general insecurity that a lot of people have with
A lot of musicians are insecure. Because we don't have a title, we don't have something to hang our hat on. It's always the last gig or the teacher you took from or the school you graduated from. There's not a lot to hang on to.
Right. And that brings up a great point that I want to make. So you almost have to ask yourself, what are the qualifications for me to be allowed to consider myself a musician or a teacher or anything of the sort that is in an industry that can be so conceptual, And honestly, through looking at myself, through learning to play for myself and of myself, I've learned that the only qualification required is passion. It's an unconditional love for the musician that you are. It's an internal conceptualization that musicians aren't college graduates. They're not conservatory professors. They're not Wynton Marsalis. By definition, he is a musician. However, what makes all of those people musicians are not their accolades. It's not a piece of paper. It's intrinsic, it's internal, and there's nothing that can take that away from me or you or anyone else who has the gumption to call themselves that word, So I would love to, and that sort of brings me back to the point of playing for yourself. This is an entirely selfish endeavor. And if you can continue to play unabashedly selfishly, then and not give so much weight to the outside perspective that you may be receiving, that foundation is what allows us to survive and to continue thriving. Because if I listen to every negative thing that somebody else said to me, or just every negative thing I've said to myself about myself, I would be sitting in a hole somewhere. I would.
Amen. As would we all be, because we can all be very hard on ourselves. So I understand.
Absolutely. So, to mention, like, self-talk is also a massive category of self-improvement that I've sort of been chipping away at along this process. And I'm at a point right now where my mentality is unshakable. And I don't see myself losing that, because I've worked so hard to sculpt um these roots that I've dug into the ground, and I'm not going anywhere, you know?
Music has really not only helped you find your voice, but be sure that you can lead with it, is what it sounds like.
Absolutely. Every major discovery that I've learned about myself has had music and performance and passion and teaching. That whole category has been a constant overshadow of my life and all the lessons I've learned. Like, all roads lead to home for me. And I can truly attribute so much of my growth to the fact that I started blowing through a plastic tube when I was 9 years old, you know? So I really am so grateful that the powers that be were able to um, meddle in my life in such a positive way to plant that seed at such a young age. I feel so blessed and so grateful.
Mhm. And so, how did you make the decision? It sounds like the decision was made, like you said from the beginning, but was there any pivotal thing that happened in high school that said, I'm going to keep going?
Well, during my middle school years, I would consider myself an insufferable theater kid, if you will. I was in 15 full-fledged stage productions, and I never sat in the chorus once. I was playing named roles with lines and musical numbers and all of the sorts. And I really thought for a minute that that was going to be it, that I would put the clarinet away and I would never touch it again because I'd be too busy on Broadway, you know?
Wow.
So it came to a point in my career with the Stambaugh Band, and then the next summer in my career with the All Ohio State Fair Band, where I placed even lower than I did in the Stambaugh Band at YSU, which is a much larger pool of musicians. So out of 30, I was pretty much right smack dab in the middle, self-trained, which is
That's
awesome.
amazing. It's amazing. No lessons. That's amazing.
Right. Like, I very much have to give myself props for where I was able to get on my own.
For sure. And yet, by then, people are taking private lessons. So the thing is, not only you're competing against people who are now having support to get better, and you didn't have that support. So that's very impressive. That's very good.
Absolutely. And so the moment that I can pinpoint where I pivoted back from my theater kid days back into my home of the clarinet industry, was when I went home from State Fair Band that year. I got on my little laptop and I found myself a mentor. And in the next year, after studying with Willow, I shot from 15th out of 30 all the way to principal in
Awesome.
under a year.
That's
It was
nice.
such an incredible period of just massive, rapid growth. And I surprised myself. Not only surprised myself, but also terrified myself that I knew that I had this in me the whole time. And I was so ashamed that I was just now finally taking myself seriously, you know? So, sophomore year,
It's funny.
higher. Junior year, higher still. And then senior year, even higher, staying first chair in the State Fair Band. Playing with professional ensembles in the area, and I started playing with the symphony, and that was it. I found such a passion for symphonic and orchestral presentation of music that I I sit in any ensemble that doesn't have a string section, and I feel it feels so foreign and strange anymore, you know?
That's
Um,
wonderful.
but yeah, I think my relationship with my mentor Willow and my relationship that I created with the symphony, or more so discovered, are really the two big nails in the coffin for me. Those were the big turning point moments, and those last few years of high school really shaped my perspective on what I would be doing for the rest of my life.
Wow. And so where did you go to college?
Absolutely. So I studied at the Baldwin Wallace Conservatory of Music with Professor Daniel McElway, or Captain for those who know. And I actually, so it was 2020 when I graduated high school. So very strange, unprecedented time, you know. And I went straight into conservatory in Cleveland that fall in 2020. So very much still in the thick of it with that era and all of the things that we collectively went through together. And it just sucked all of the love and the life that I had out of me. And I just came out of that year in the spring of 2021 not having anything left.
Really?
I truly lost my passion, and I will be honest, this is a hard thing to admit, especially in such a public sphere. But I left school. I dropped out with 1 year of conservatory education.
What the heck happened? What, it was just so hard or
Well, there was a level of a mental health crisis that I was going through as a result of the times, and some social issues that I was going through, and being on my own for the first time in my life as an 18 and a half year old,
right.
over an hour away from home. You know, that was a really scary and, again, incredibly unprecedented time. And to be on my own at that time is just another level of fear, you know,
Right.
and trauma even. It's traumatizing to be on your own. And I think that we as a society maybe need to give that a little bit more weight. So,
Well, that's why kids are staying at home so much, is because it is so difficult to leave.
right.
It's difficult to go off on your own. I mean, I left the house when I was 13, so tell me about it. Right? Really nasty stuff. It's super, super challenging to do that. And so I give you kudos for recovering from it, because you did recover. Obviously, what happened next?
Oh, absolutely. So I quit playing. I I spent $10,000 on clarinets. I played them for a year, and then I put them in a box in the back of my closet, and I didn't touch them for 2 years.
Wow.
In the
What
in
did
the,
you do in those 2 years?
well, I started working in a restaurant as a waitress. I started making money. I figured, if it's not this, then I have to do the other thing. I have to build a career somewhere else. And
Right.
for me, my niche was restaurants. You know, I job hopped a lot during that first year of sabbatical, I'll call it. And then I sort of settled into this burger bar restaurant as an entry level serving gig, and grew and grew and grew and took it from there. And I still carry a part of that. So I am thankful for that
Right.
time. Because at the current moment, I work with an incredible Michelin star chef serving these really awesome high class dinner services, that and I did unlock a passion for that as well during that period. So though it's such a negative time, I do respect the lessons learned, you know?
Well, it
So
brought you something else. And it's
right,
always, sometimes in our darkest moment, we get something else out of that we don't always see as a gift until later. And then we realize that helped us.
completely. So and it's interesting because if it weren't for the phone call that I received from the Tuscarora Philharmonic back in Ohio in December of 2022, I likely still wouldn't be playing to this day.
Wow.
Um, and they're a little cliffhanger for the listeners, but so to dive a little deeper into this, I was at a time in where I found myself in an abusive relationship.
Mhm.
I couldn't have anything for myself, and at this point, that's what playing the instrument was turning into be. I left school. I had all of this shame, and I was just ready to let that go. So um I received a referral from my mentor, Willow, who I had no idea had done this. She had no idea where I had been, what I had been doing, because essentially I fell off the face of the planet for 2 years after school. All of the shame and the guilt just kept me from speaking to anyone in any way. Not to mention the relationship that I allowed myself to be in. But this phone call that I received was the beginning of my adult love story with my passion for music. I took the call and they asked me, do you want to play on our Christmas jamboree? Like, we have a choir, we have a children's choir, we have a full symphony. You'll get paid to play for the first time in your life. And you will come back after 2 years of hating yourself as a professional musician.
They didn't say that to you, but you said that to yourself for sure.
That internally, but that's very much what it was. Years of non-experience, and then to be catapulted back in the industry by this random godsend professional gig was just amazing. And that is part of the reason why I believe that I had no control over this, because from the start, it has just been serendipity after serendipity, like godsend after godsend, and the momentum has never stopped because I'm living another blessing every day. Like,
I understand. I do understand this. The clarinet and music has a weird way of doing this to you if you open yourself up to it.
right.
It just offers you this if you let it.
Absolutely. And that's what I've done. I have fully submitted to the ebbs and flows of my career in music because, like I said in college, I truly cannot do anything else. I can, though. Like, in practice, I'm a very talented and multifaceted person, but however, there's no passion in that. There's no passion in working 40 hours a week in a restaurant. There's no passion in stocking shelves or selling designer sunglasses or purses like I have in the past. However, there is a great passion and this magnetic attraction, like you mentioned before, to my career with music, and there's absolutely nothing that can take that or shake me at this point after being through such an interesting relationship with my music making and with myself as a musician, learning to see myself in that way and learning to accept that's what I am. Imposter syndrome is incredibly crippling, and it has been that insecurity in the back of my head for as long as I can remember, and I've only just recently begun to tap into the side of me that is so much stronger than that. And I'm just, I could not be more excited to be where I am right this minute.
And as a young person in music who's evolved, it is such a natural thing to have it be so important to develop your relationship with it. How do you see your audience now?
So the audience, that's an interesting question because I've done so much looking in the mirror, I'll say, in terms of my relationship recently. I truly, in a lot of ways, hardly see the audience at all. Because when I'm on stage, when I'm working through my gift and I'm expressing musically, it's just the same as if I were in a giant dark room all by myself, I will say the theater kid in me loves the applause and loves the director pointing at me to stand for my bass clarinet solo. I love the recognition, and I love the mutual respect that an audience and a performer in any industry employ. So there is this level of love that I have for the audience, but still I play selfishly. I don't play for them. I play for me. Incredibly grateful that there are people in this world that want to hear from me. They want to hear the sounds that come out of an instrument that I've um, fiddled with for almost over a decade at this point. Not even almost, 14, 15 years now.
Right.
And so there is this rapport, this give and take between the audience and the performer. However, I think the best performers hardly notice the audience at all.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is how do we reach more people? Because as somebody with so much passion, it's very tricky. And maybe that's where some of the repair things come in. Or, how do you touch people so that they become as inspired? Because your passion is infectious. And to think that the audience receives it, but that it's not as direct of a channel. It's like, what is the way to help them connect? Because that's what Toot Your Own Horn is about, is trying to help people start to understand, look, everybody works at this. Everybody, yes, we might have some interest in it, but there's a definitely effort to be able to master this effect that touches us so greatly.
Right. Well, I think the ultimately in the music industry right now, we have this really deep-seated exclusivity that even just calling yourself a musician feels so exclusive. It feels so wrong at times, especially when you're just getting started, So I think ultimately it comes down to, as an industry, we need to open our arms. We need to invite people in, because when you express an interest in learning, you go from an audience member to a student. So I think if we can turn more audience members, or just general everyday people who have never been to a concert of live music in their lives, if we can introduce them to this welcoming and warm energy that I felt so much in the industry, that has kept me attracted to my love for the clarinet. I think that is sort of the key. We have to stop sticking our nose up in the air as musicians and start looking at the people around us and inviting them into our house. That it very much feels that way. Like the whole society is a group of vampires trying to get in the door, and all we have to say is come in. It's that outreach, that welcome, especially to people who are grown. I mean, a lot of what we see in the industry right now is geared towards children, and that's great. Children are in a very, very good place to become great at anything that they put their minds to. You have plenty of time to figure out what works and what doesn't, and what you love and what you hate. However, there's this level of ignorance that we have towards adult musicians, that we don't extend them the same grace. So I think that part of my teaching journey has been pivoting from teaching young beginner students to teaching much older students. I have a student right now who's a retired doctor. He didn't play clarinet for 30 years, and he gave me a call and said, "Hey, I want to pick this back up, and I want you to help me do it." And here we are almost 2 years later, and we're still on the same track. And he practices, he writes assignments, he assigns his own assignments sometimes, So, and not only is he driving the boat and intrinsically motivated to grow, but he also is just an incredible person to work with. And we've grown such a lovely relationship as teacher and student, and even deeper as friends, So I think that not only do we need to try to be less exclusive as an industry, less upturned nose and more, hi, how are you? But we also need to extend the same grace that we extend to children and young people to people of all ages. Everybody deserves the same introductory music theory lesson. Everyone deserves to have a mentor who will take the time, no matter what their age or skill level, to help them. That's what teaching is. It's helping. And I think that we in our industry could all be a little bit more helpful.
I really agree with that. I mean, I really wish that more teachers like you would recognize that there are potential students everywhere. They're at chambers of commerce. They're in the dinner that you had with a stranger at a party. They're everywhere, and you have to share your love of music to infect them with the idea that they can do this too, right? That maybe this is a powerful thing for them to try. And sometimes you can convert them, right? And then you get them hooked and then they tell someone else. And that's the power of music.
Absolutely. I think that you've illustrated my point perfectly. That music is so powerful. And if we can stop harboring all that power for ourselves, we'll learn that there's plenty enough to go around.
So, what is the difference between self awareness and power? Meaning, when you say power, because I feel like a lot of musicians, the way that you've described this, I don't feel like you're self-absorbed musician, but you talked a lot about it being for self, which I think is true. I think it does have to start with self. And I was trying to understand how you saw the audience primarily because I'm trying to understand your motivations for reaching out to other people, which you articulated beautifully. But how do you think that other people don't necessarily make that same kind of connection? Because you see a lot of musicians who say, well, I'm only going to do this, or I'm only going to do that, or this didn't pay enough, or that's not good enough, or this isn't worthy enough, or this is beneath me. And I'm wondering where that comes from, or if you have any ideas about that.
Right. Well, I think that if we want to speak about power, there are two ways that can manifest in a person. It can manifest in negativity, or it can be this positive power that is infectious, like you've mentioned, and virally conscripts others into the passion that we share. And I will say that I believe that self-awareness is power. I think that there's a certain level of maturity that's required to objectively sit back and look at oneself and say, where the heck did I go wrong? Or even to just question things that you've been so sure of your entire life. I was one of those people that was only playing. I went to Baldwin Wallace Conservatory to graduate firstly and to get a professional gig right out of school. That was my path for the years leading up to that, when I finally decided that this is what I was doing. And I think that the loss of that, the complete loss of my passion and my love for those years, or maybe less of a loss and more of a repression because I truly didn't believe that I could do it. Being at that rock bottom is what taught me self-awareness, is what taught me that the power had always been inside of me. And when I started aligning myself with that power, that is when things really changed.
Carmen, you are just an inspiration. I really have enjoyed our conversation, and I bet others have too. And I'm wondering if somebody was listening to what you said and just really loving your story, what would you say to them to inspire them to try to play a wind instrument right now?
Right. Well, I probably start with, why wouldn't you? What sports are you playing that takes up so much of your time that you can't find a second to blow through a tube just to see if it works, you
Go
know?
with your grandma to the pawn shop. And if you're older than that, go to the pawn shop and find your own clarinet.
Exactly. There are pawn shops everywhere. You could find an Amazon clarinet for $70. Granted, it may not work.
It's not a great choice, but it's better than no choice, right?
Right. But what I'm saying is that it's accessible.
Yes.
It's not as far as you might think.
Right.
It's inside of you. Before you even touch a musical instrument, you have the seed in your heart. And all you need to do is give it a little bit of water and look at yourself in the mirror and say, I can do this. And that's truly what it comes down to, I think. I think it's a great way to also inspire new musicians or returning musicians to re-inspire, is to stress that you are going to do this for yourself. This is going to be an incredible journey that you will go down that will teach you things you never thought you needed to know until you know them. And that,
the truth.
right. And that power, that opportunity for growth and for maturity is what I think should make everybody play.
Totally. Fastest connector, heart to head. You just showed it.